Do I have to turn it on or no?
No, it's gone.
I need my sunglasses.
Likely not. 3, 4, 5, yep. All present and accounted for. Good evening, folks. Welcome to the first meeting of 2018. Happy New Year. I'm excited to start in on a new adventure. That's kind of what New Year's feels like to me every year. We are going to start with the approval of the December 14th, 2017 board meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look? Anybody spot any corrections or things we need to delete?
I move for approval.
It's been moved. We approve those minutes. May I have a second, please? Thank you. Is there any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving those minutes, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Very well. If it's okay with the board, I would like to change the location of public comment tonight, at least part of it, to now, as we have some special guests here from the IU Water Ski Club. We have been approached by them last year, and Adam and I met with them in December about the potential for a slalom course on Lake Lemon. And so we invited them to come and tell us a little bit about what they're proposing, and we'd like to let them get back to their Thursday night. So I would invite Jonathan and Sonia and Lauren to come up and tell us what you're looking for. And Brian, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce him.
Hey, hi, I'm Sonia Popovich, and I'm a sophomore on the team.
My name's Lauren Golden. I'm also a sophomore on the team.
I'm John, and I'm a junior.
I'm Brian Deddy. Was an IU Ski Club member in 1980 through 1984, and a parent of a IU Ski team member from last year through the last 4 years.
And we're here to talk to you today about a little bit more about who we are as a team and why we so desperately want a slalom course on Lake Lemon, what a slalom course is, and why we think that you should want a slalom course on Lake Lemon as well. So,
Give me a little.
there you go. So who is the Indiana Water Ski and Wakeboard Club team? Well, we're a group of adventurous, fun-loving IU students. We've been around since the 70s and on Lake Lemon for the majority of that period. And we're basically the crazy kids you see who are braving the 40-degree water in March and utilizing every minute of the sun until we're forced to put the boat away in the winter. We operate under the IU Recreational Sports. We are funded by alumni, Indiana University, dues, and fundraising. And because we operate under IU Rec Sports, we're required to follow some of their strict rules, including logging practices, having an AED and CPR certified student coach on the boat at all times, and also having a certified and licensed driver on the boat. We also belong to the USA Water Ski Association, and this is the largest water ski federation globally and the official water ski governing body of the Olympic Committee. And they also provide additional sanctions and rules for us to follow, and in turn, we have their insurance covering our members and our property. So because we belong to these two different organizations, we're eligible to compete in national collegiate water ski tournaments. This consists of 3 events: skiing, which is jumping, tricking, and our favorite, which is slalom. We belong to the Midwest region and compete in the Great Lakes Conference, which includes schools from Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana. And the majority of these teams that are listed on the board, and the majority of teams in this conference, and in the National Collegiate Water Ski Association in general, have accessible courses and ramps that they can get regular practice on. They practice on their own version of Lake Lemon. Some of these lakes are private and small. Some of these are public and in high traffic areas. For example, MSU practices on the Grand River in Lansing, Michigan. So this year, our team is a little bit different in the past. In the past, we've been kind of indifferent to the tournaments. We love being on the boat and soaking up the sun and just enjoying our time as a team together. But this year we have increased our membership to 34 members and are extremely excited to improve and compete and actually have a showing at these tournaments. So we were super excited for our first tournament this year, and we were really excited about showing up with 10 people, which is a lot for us. And only to realize that when we got there, 10 people was actually the smallest team. So throughout the night, I talked to a lot of people from different teams, and they'd ask me what team I was from, and I always respond with IU. And they'd respond with something like, oh, like I didn't even know IU had a team. So despite this, I was still super excited for the slalom competition the next morning. I have water skied since I was 5 years old, and I have slalomed pretty much every single day over the summer since I was 8 on a lake in northern Wisconsin. And although I've never really been slalomed on a slalom course, I figured how different could it be? Well, I figured I'd kill it in the competition the next day and it wouldn't be a problem. And even though I didn't need practice, I still waited in line that night for 4 hours and paid $15 for an attempt at the slalom course, just 5 minutes. And told them to start at like an average speed and I would easily get through the buoys and then I could easily move on. Well, I only ended up hitting 2 buoys, and at that tournament, our only member to actually score and receive points was our very own Lauren Goldman. Yay! So it was evident that if we wanted to do decent in the next couple tournaments, we really needed practice. So traveled about an hour and a half away to the nearest course over the next couple of weeks, multiple times, and by the conference tournament, I actually ended up placing 12th out of 100 females, which was nothing compared to Lauren's 4th. And a lot of our other members ended up scoring at that tournament as well. But if it wasn't already clear, we really needed a course. Water skiing without a course is kind of like playing basketball without a basketball hoop. You can get really good on a court at the fundamentals like dribbling and passing and fitness, but you can't really understand how to put the ball in the hoop and how to score, which is what matters. Same thing goes for water skiing. We've gotten really good on Lake Lemon, and our practice has been super beneficial with cutting and fitness, but when it comes to actually understanding timing and understanding the proper form, it's kind of impossible without having a physical course to practice on. However, even despite the fact that we don't have a course, we still have some really talented skiers and ended up placing 8th at the conference tournament out of 17 teams, which is better than 9 teams who have regular practice on a course. And if we had a course, there's a possibility or a probability that we would have placed in the top 7 and moved on to the regional tournament. A course will be super beneficial because it'll help our team members have a tangible goal to reach for instead of just messing around behind the boat on a regular basis. It'll excite potential new members, and if we end up going to regionals, it'll attract sponsors and more new members, and that will help our team become more sustainable in the long run. A slalom course on Lake Lemon would change the course of our club.
Can you do me a favor and click this video? We're going to play about a 40-second clip for you to give you an idea of what a course is like from the water skiing perspective. In the meantime, I'd like to pass this. This is a buoy. This is what the course is made up of. I'd like to pass this just down the road to the audience so you guys have an idea of what you're actually skiing around and what's really out on the lake.
Is this on Lake Lemon?
This is not on the film. You'll see him, the time of the course is relatively short, just a few seconds, and it feels like barely a second when you're skiing. And thanks to some of you guys now know who we are and why we need it. I'll pass this to you guys. And I'm gonna tell you what exactly the course is. So you can see the skier navigated around 6 buoys, and as he started, he went through, you can pause it. If you click in the light, I think it's good. So, go back one. So the starter, or the skier started by entering through the 2 red gates in the beginning, and those are the entrance gates. He then navigated around 6 buoys, like the other one that's floating around the audience, and he exited through the exit gates. The entire length of the course is 850 feet long, with about 600 feet on the other side of the course for boat navigation. The course is roughly 76 feet wide. Those buoys stretch 37.5 feet off the center line, and that's what the skier's navigating around. Next slide. So what the course looks like and the rigging underwater is this image here. The only thing that you would see on the lake is the colored buoys. Those are the only things that would be visible when the course is fully up and we're skiing on it. When we're not skiing on it, there would be nothing visible. It'd be, everything is laying on the lake bed. This frame would be laying on the lake bed and we would attach the buoys for our own use. And when we're done, we can remove the buoys unless there's something else you guys like we can leave them up for the homeowners or lake use, that kind of thing. What's underneath the water? Good time there. What's underneath the water? This main line here on the left is that cable that runs along the center of the course. The PVC arm with cable inside of it is 37.5 feet. That's what I was talking about, that stretches out to the buoy. Both of those are laying flat on the lake bed. The main line may look like it's standing up in this description here, but it is actually flat. It's just for presentation purposes. And then the buoy and the bungee cord that attaches the buoy to the frame on the lake bed is set to the length at which the depth of the frame is laying. So if we're in 5 feet of water, that's 5 feet, 6 feet, etc. So that's all based on lake floor and where the frame is laying.
So the frame is always on the bottom of the lake?
Correct. The frame is always on the bottom of the lake, so it doesn't add any. When the buoys are gone and there's no bungee cords, there's nothing you're going to hit that you wouldn't otherwise hit. If there was a rock down there, it's going to be a rock. It adds about 3 inches for the PVC piping to the bottom of the lake bed. That's what we'd be adding when we're not using it.
Is the system similar to what the road called, or the crew?
Yeah, there's a cable.
So how do you find your anchors?
So that's a good question. If you go to the next slide, how this works is when the system is detached, this rigging lays on the lake bed, and there's an anchor on either end of the entire rigging. And to find our rigging, we would have essentially one hook that's attached to the main line and a rope that we would tie onto a rock and swim to shore, let the rope again lay on the lake bed. When we want to find our rigging, we pick this rope up, idle over to where we think our course is until we're pulling straight up, jump in the water, and if you go back 2 slides, you'll see this basically underwater rigging. One more forward. So our anchor would originally start, or our identifying hook with the cable would start right where our anchor is, and as we swim forwards, this hook would stop once we hit our first V. We can't swim the anchor hook or the finder hook all the way up the main line because we have an obstruction when we hit our boat gates. We have an obstruction for the first boat gates and our first buoy. So that hook helps us identify where we are in the course. And then when we need to, when we know where we are, we swim down and attach our bungee cord and buoy. And Mr. Deddy has a lot of experience with this system. It's something that he's very familiar with and knows really well, and says that the setup times are 15 to 20 minutes maximum. Takedown times are 5 to 10. So it's an efficient system that leaves essentially nothing. It's out of sight, out of mind, and really what's down there is 3 inches off the lake bed when we're not using it. And when we are, then we have a full course that we can put up and take down in 30 minutes of that time, 20 or so going up and 10 going down.
And you need 5 feet of water.
Correct. Safe operation is 4 to 5 feet, so that's just for skier safety.
The minimum.
And yeah, so
I might add here, and that's, I think you're explaining it perfectly. There are some exceptions to the rule. Generally, I know that you've got a rowing course. The rowing course on Eagle Creek, I'm aware of, is a cable that runs slightly under the water. It can be compromised by a boat, a lower unit possibly. And John, as you mentioned, this thing would sit on the bottom of the lake always, unless you left buoys on. Now, if you decide to put this thing in 20 foot of water, that probably would not be the case. I would suggest what you do there is attach what they call sub-buoys, buoys that may be just a few feet above the PVC pipe that would float it, but the sub-buoys would stay, you can determine the depth. I would suggest 3 to 5 foot underneath the surface, so nobody's going to get into anything. They can still swim and find the buoys. So we did the same thing back in 1986. A group of us worked with DNR and the Homeowners Association in White River, believe it or not, just north of Broad Ripple.
Oh my
And we got a song, there's used to be a gravel pit that they put condos around.
Mhm.
And
Exactly where that is.
So we went round and round and finally arrived at a resolution to do just this. And we had a rope tied to either it was a stick or a tree on shore. And we just took we had a 15-foot piece of rope with a snap. You snap that hook onto that rope and you just swam until it hit the course. And then once you get 2 buoys on, then the rest is just kind of a straight line.
So it must be done by feel, because we're talking no
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah,
to me,
absolutely.
but-
Well, you can swim along the main line. You can swim and then there's a piece of PVC pipe. You got 2 eyelets, hook. And you just keep. So what we normally do is meet in the middle and throw buoys out, and then 2 swimmers will go the opposite end. And
Okay.
10 minutes, you have it up, and it comes down quicker.
So you have to hold your breath and dive down though at that point, or do you
So,
lift it up?
depending
and
on,
hook it?
so if it's in 15 foot of water, let's say, then it's going to be suspended off the bottom. And these buoys are going to be, what I mentioned, is 3 to 5 foot underneath the surface. And you'll swim until you kick a buoy and then just duck your head in the water and clip on. I live in a water ski community west of Indianapolis now, and we take our course down. We're a permanently anchored course, so we don't have the PVC framework. And we take all of our buoys off in the winter. So here, probably in the next 4 weeks, we'll be going through the whole process. But it takes us a lot longer because we don't have any reference points. There's no PVC pipe, there's no cable. So, in talking with this group, why I'm here, a couple days ago, Lauren's dad, a water ski buddy of mine from years ago, called and wanted to know if I had some pictures that they might be able to use for their slide presentation. I said, what's up? And so my son graduated last year. He competed for IU for the last 4 years. And what they're saying is absolute truth. He never had a chance to ski in the national championship because IU wasn't good enough. He was raised on a water ski course and was fairly accomplished. Just like a kid's raised on a golf course, he's probably going to be a decent golfer. And they were so close back then to getting into that next notch to get them qualified for regionals that got them to nationals. These kids are right there. They just need a place. So I thought I would be here. You're going to have some questions and concerns. And the neighborhood that I live in, we share the same concerns. We have guests out every day. And we've been there 18 years. I've run 3 national tournaments. We've had 5 or 6 state tournaments out where we live, and this many problems. So I'd be more than glad to answer questions later at another time regarding insurance, liability, that sort of thing. It's taken care of. They're governed by a national body. It's very strong. It's not their first time around the block. And the majority of the skiers, say in Florida, they don't ski in private lakes like where I live. They ski on lakes like Lake Lemon, believe it or not.
So, with that being said, the rigging, as mentioned earlier, would be totally flat on the bottom of the lake. And when it was up, let's say, we're skiing and we take a break and we're sitting at one end. If a boat were to navigate through the course, as long as it doesn't hit any buoys or the bungee cord attached to the buoys, it's not going to hit any of the rigging. It's still, the rigging is underneath the surface, right? There's a clearance that is totally safe to navigate any boats through there. The only risk that they have of hitting anything would be that rubber buoy and the bungee cord that attaches that to the rigging that's laying on the lake bed. And with that, more than likely the bungee cord would break and the buoy would float away. And we will accept any maintenance of the course in any of those instances. We would be responsible for replacing those parts of the course to keep it operable.
You're talking about if one of our freeholders drives through it?
Correct, or if we hit it, or if there's anything happening, but
Okay.
if we're using it and the buoys are up, then more than likely we'll be in the course. But if let's say, I've skied a couple passes and I want to take a break for 10 minutes and I'm sitting down at one end and a boat were to come through there, if anything were to happen, the worst that they could do is hit a bungee cord with their prop and cut the ball loose.
Would you guys be practicing during the week?
Yes, we would be practicing during the week.
Less boat traffic during the week.
Next slide. So this is to reiterate what I said before, that when it's attached or when it's detached, there's just nothing but the rigging laying on the lake bed. Something to note: there are no environmental hazards with any of the materials in this rigging. It's PVC pipe and cable, so it's pretty straightforward, and it is removable. If 5 years, 10 years down the road after, if you guys are willing to approve something like this, it's not a permanent thing. It can be taken out. It's not like we need to sink a bunch of concrete anchors in or have anything, fixed to the lake bed forever. If this is something that you guys want to try and it doesn't work 5 or 10 years down the road, we can take the rigging out. Also, as a price point for you guys, this setup for us costs roughly $1,300 to $1,500, so anywhere in that range. Next slide. Location. Where should it go? Now that you know what it is, who we are, and why we need it, where is the next biggest question? Our preferred location would be option A along South Shore Drive. I know previously that there was a course on Lake Lemon in this area. The depths there are sufficient for a course, as you'll see in the next slide. And it's an area that we love to ski. The being by the road, it's not too noisy for any residents. It has a good windbreak, and it's a good stretch of water where it's long, flat, and straight. It usually is just pretty tucked away and a great spot to ski. So we find that there's not too many boats hanging out over there like there would be near residential areas. Noise from any ski boat is not something that would affect homeowners going along the road, as well as any of the waves. A lot of the waves are breaking on the shore, or they're breaking on the point just north of there. So it's not something that would disturb the peace of any homeowners too much, being in location A. Location B is a secondary location that we've chosen for very similar reasons. It's usually pretty good skiing. Houses in that area are pretty limited, and again, we're conscious of noise and any disturbance of homeowners around the lake. So those are our two preferred locations, and both of which have sufficient depth for a ski course and safe operation for skiers, boaters, just to keep that in mind.
Have you guys spoken with the IU rowing club at all about positions? Because I know they're moving their course this year, and the starting point on their course is going to be kind of right about where you guys propose in that A, going to go along the south shore there.
That's a great question.
Yeah, move to the next slide real quick.
So, to answer your question, we have called rowing, and I've spoken with Mr. Peterson, who is their rowing coach before, and we have a really good relationship with them. We've met with them a couple times this year, and I understand their rowing course is something that is going to be running down basically the middle of the lake after meeting with you. So in option A, the course can be shifted east and put more east on South Shore Drive, closer to the east bay there, or we can put it towards option B and move that a little bit more southeast, if that's something that you guys would consider. But we can work with them to be out of the way for their rowing course. And again, this structure is only 76 feet wide with rigging, so it's it's like the long and narrow one on Battleship, where you can fit it in these stretches pretty well. So I'm not too concerned about that, but when the time comes, that's something that we would work out if that's the approved location. Next slide. And now I'm going to introduce Lauren, who's going to talk to you about when and then the liability.
So we understand that if we were to get a course installed on this lake, it would be a privilege, and we want to work with you to make sure that our times align with what you would like for us. Our goal is to have our structure stay permanently along the end of the lake, and we would come in and set up our buoys when we need to practice. And our two primary seasons are March through Memorial Day in the spring, and then August, roughly Labor Day, after Labor Day, we go as late as November in the fall. We are active during the summer, so we would not plan on having everything up at that time, and especially if people living on the lake did not want that up, we would not have those buoys installed. However, if homeowners are interested in using our course, we are always open to allowing that access and keeping the buoys up and letting people ski when they want. That's a decision for the people that live on the lake. Me personally, I live in Bloomington. Like, I'll be here this summer, so I could oversee who wants to use the course and whatnot. And if we don't want it to be used on weekends or other periods of time, we can easily, as we talked about, take the course up and down, so that won't be an issue. And these are problems we foresaw everybody on the board may be having issues with, such as rowing and their course. We came up with decreasing the usage in the spring. We are primarily active in the fall. Either way, that's when more of our tournaments are, so we would be okay with allotting their use of the course of their own course in the spring. And we can locate our own course to avoid their practice. We have minimal equipment, everything sits low down on the water. It's really easy to navigate and very safe. The buoys are removable, and we can decrease boat traffic by, again, removing these buoys. It's relatively harmless to ski on a course. The primary injury that water skiers deal with is a shattered eardrum, and that's just from falling too hard, so a course doesn't really affect that. And this also promotes really serious and form-focused skiing. So somebody like myself is going to see a course as an opportunity to practice, and I'm not going to be messing around and trying tricks and then hurting myself. This is not what I'm seeing this as. And I would assume that anybody that is serious about water skiing would not view a course this way. And again, minimal boat, like no boat damage, especially not a motorized boat. It would hurt the course, it would not hurt their own boat. And for liability, as we'll talk about later, our governing body will oversee our insurance coverage. So, go on.
Just a question on that. So I think it's American Water Skiing Association.
Yes.
So do you guys pay a fee and then you get coverage to them?
Yes.
Now, do you have any insurance through IU as well? I know, like, I used to play hockey a lot, so we had the Hockey of America, but we wouldn't be able to add additional insureds. So we would eventually come up with a contract to do this. We would need to be on as an additional insured for any insurance up to whatever our liability coverages are. Now, would you guys be able to acquire that through there? Would you have to go through a third-party insurance company or potentially IU to cover us as well?
So, by being a member of USA Water Ski, anything that is sanctioned covers the ski team. By them simply keeping a log, which they do, anything that happens to, as far as injury or whatnot, is covered for them. As far as additional insured, the answer to that is yes. USA Water Ski sponsors an additional 2 or 3 different layers of coverage. And I've kind of briefly read through this. I'm not an insurance person, I'm not an attorney. But I believe that there's a very suitable and affordable policy that fits the mold where they don't own the lake, they don't lease the lake, yet they insure homeowners associations, conservancies and whatnot. So, and you can be named as an additional insured.
Yeah, you can go on to the next slide, Adam. Yeah, so this is our governing body, as we touched on early on. Our big point we wanted to bring home is that there will be no liability for the Lake Lemon Conservancy District. This is our property, and this Conservancy District will not be held accountable for any injuries to our property or any injuries to any skiers or anybody that uses the course. Our university will not take liability, as we explained. It is all going to be done through our governing body. They provide a general liability and participant coverage for our club because for us who water ski, we all are members of this association, and through our membership dues, it covers this insurance plan. And we have several different programs that entitle us to public and private entities, and we will be covered up to $2 million from injuries to damage, equipment, or anybody that is using our property. And for why we want to use Lake Lemon, we really like using our lake a lot. This is our favorite place to be. We love the proximity from our campus. It's an easily accessible lake and strong IU affiliation. And we know of other skiers that use this lake, and we were hoping that they would be interested in it as well.
Sure.
You guys have held up really well
Yeah, you
since.
really
I got a little
It's
shorter
actually
than I
from
used to
Lake
be.
Lemon.
Yeah, I recognize
that.
I've seen that somewhere, yeah.
It's on the website.
Well, you guys have done your homework, obviously,
Okay.
and I'm very impressive presentation. I would suggest that going back to what you said, Brian, we might have our insurance and our attorney review these things and come back with their thoughts. It sounds, I don't have a bunch of questions. Do you guys have? No. You've answered them.
I got maybe to, what size is the cable from the one end of the main line to the other end of the main line?
A 1/4 inch, some are even an 1/8 inch, I think can be.
Eighth
thinner.
inch is.
And then there's an anchor, there's a concrete anchor at each end that's stretched tight to keep that cable down on the lake bottom?
Correct, there are 2 anchors. What is very common, maybe you can cover this. 'cause
Yeah,
you're more
probably
specific.
I would, depending on the bottom, 4-foot augers, and an auger on each end is all you need.
And so the PVC comes off the main line, and there's no anchor on that end of that PVC that you hook a bungee cable to, correct?
That's correct.
So that bungee and that buoy could actually pull that PVC up off the bottom.
That's right. So the buoy can suspend the course.
Okay.
So.
And that bungee is how long?
Depending on how deep you want your course.
Okay, so the bungee
Yeah.
could be 5 feet or 6 feet or,
Right.
okay.
Yep. And typically, you've got your main line's typically 8th inch aircraft cable, and then it's 2-inch PVC pipe. So, you can use anchors, but we found for our ski jumps, there's nothing better than 4-foot augers.
And I'll tell you why I'm asking these questions, because I know maybe some people in the audience have questions, but we've hooked the sailing club's cables, and that's why the course is being moved with our anchors.
Sure.
I don't think in option A, a lot of people anchor there except for fishermen. So that's really all the questions I have.
I guess really the next draft, and we can talk it over, but ultimately we'd have to come up with a special use agreement for the lake and get the insurance. I think with IU rowing for special use, we require $1 million per incident liability. Something like you have 2, and it's probably per occurrence. So we'd have to get that in there, show us as additional insured, City of Bloomington Utilities as additional insured, so then we could move forward from that.
Yeah, we're able to purchase plans, like specifically that will cover anybody that uses our course, not just us. Anybody that were to get injured on our course will be covered through our program.
So I think probably one of the key things that I would do is really focus in on the insurance component of things. The other thing is I'm reading this documentation that talks about the club requiring to obtain and maintain signed waivers and releases for participants. So I think we need to look at the procedures and protocol for that. There's actually one process that might be even simple for them, and that would be for them to look into. But I think we need to understand what process they're using. But there are some online waiver forms that are working very nicely that we use in Columbia Parks and Recreation for the flow rider. So that might also be something that works really easily for the age of the participants in that as well. So anyway, but those would be the 2 things that to me would be critical to make sure that we iron out. But I don't see that as something that's insurmountable.
One other question, are you guys gonna do wakeboarding as well, or is it strictly skiing?
Well, we already have been wakeboarding. We ski out there all the time. Wakeboarders won't be using this course particularly. This is not really what they're interested in. But generally, we're not going to be on the lake any more or less than we already have been. It's just that the type of performance, what we're going to be doing, is going to be at a higher caliber.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I see this as a lot less impact than the course for the rowing.
Than the rowing
A lot
course,
less
yeah.
buoys, shorter periods of time.
We can adjust that too. If you guys find that, it's something that homeowners on the lake want to try or see or have an interest in, what we can adjust to what you guys want. If in the beginning it's just us when we ski, we can put it in, take it out, and all that's down there is just the rigging that's laying 3 inches off the bottom. And if you find that for maybe, a month in April or a time after Labor Day when the lake settles down and it's just homeowners are still around, that you want us to leave it up for a period of time and let homeowners try it or be on the course, and that's something that we can also adjust to. So it's really, it's easy to change how long it's up for, and it's really a low hassle setup.
Any questions from you all on this? Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. So right now you are only practicing during the week? Is that
We practice on the weekends as well.
okay? But I mean, with this course up, you'd only be practicing during the week, or is that would it be
That
weekend
would,
too?
whatever. We are willing to compromise with that, whatever the constituency.
Okay,
is.
well, let's say you guys get really good, and now you're having tournaments. Are there going to be tournaments on the lake too?
So
Oh, yeah.
we have a,
You got one more?
a couple more here.
So this, we're alluding to how will a course benefit the people that live on the lake. Potential for homeowner use and lake entertainment, so if people would like to ski, they are more than welcome to. And as the only lake with a course in the area, Lake Lemon can become an attraction if that is desired. If you would like to bring in revenue and people on the water, you can. If not, again, we can get rid of only the buoys when we are skiing. It betters our performance substantially by having this course, which again will increase the lake recognition. And we want to build a relationship with you as a constituency and the homeowners. And we strongly believe that if we had a course that we allowed, or if that everybody wanted to use, that would help build our relationship. And we want to give back to the community, especially if we do have a course, by hosting these type of community events, volunteering and fundraising to benefit the Conservancy District. So it is up to, we have talked about interest in hosting tournaments if that is desired by the homeowners, and only if it is desired by the homeowners.
I haven't
When did
got
you
a
say
problem
the
with this, other than I'm just worried that if you have a lot of events going on weekends, that area is kind of a choke point in the lake. And so there's a lot of traffic that goes by there.
When did you say that the tournaments would most likely, I mean, your season you said was pre-Memorial Day and post-Labor Day till November. When do the tournaments typically occur?
Typically the tournaments are, again, in that post-Labor Day area, like early fall, because obviously for a lot of people.
When the kids are back in, when you
Right,
guys
you get back in school and then you don't want to be skiing on ice like some of us enjoy out of Oakland. So, and hosting tournaments is something that, again, we would kind of go through this process with you guys, and it's not something that we just like all of a sudden just show up and we're having a tournament. It's something that we'd want to work with you, and it again be another point to give back to the community. They're super fun to watch. You know, it's really involved, and they're revenue generators as well. It's something that you guys can win out of. So it's fun for us. It gives us some recognition, a better name, and it also would benefit you guys with some sort of revenue as fees for schools and skiers come in. You know, we would be generating a lot of revenue, and something we'd be willing to split with you guys.
Also, John said that the tournaments mainly are in the fall, but there are like some tournaments in the spring and even tournaments in the summer that we could also look into. I mean, we're not around in the summer, but we do travel to Michigan State, like, what is it, the second weekend of summer to attend a tournament there. So it's also something that
Okay.
we.
There was another
So
question.
you had a
Yep.
tournament. Do the people observing, watching the tournament, are they more in boats, or would there be increased traffic along South Shore, which is, you know,
The car traffic?
Yeah,
you
car
mean?
traffic, parking and so forth there?
Maybe I
Yes.
can speak to that. So during their ski season, it would be highly unlikely they would ever have a tournament. They wouldn't be here to have a tournament. All the tournaments are in Ohio. There's a few private lakes in Ohio that are set up to do these collegiate tournaments because they literally have 250 to 300 skiers in a weekend, which is a bunch. There's only so many hours in the day. The other thing too is, in order to ski a slalom course, the water's got to be pretty still. So if you've got even a pontoon boat idling through, that's enough to just not do well. So it behooves them, if they want to get better, to do this early morning. Whatever works best for your side works for them, but the quieter the water, the better. The middle of the weekend day just doesn't work. So if you wanted to have a tournament, if you don't, I think they're fine with that. But if something you wanted to explore, it would be what you would start off having a fun tournament, so it would be sanctioned. You have all the insurance, but it'd be a little level, and it would be mostly your homeowners and that sort of thing. And I was telling them one of the funnest tournaments I can't tell you how many hundreds of tournaments I've been to. But the neatest one was on a public lake down in Kentucky. They asked me to come down and drive it. And they took boats, homeowners took their boats and just kind of made a barricade around the course. Everyone anchored. And they had a radio station come down with a pontoon boat and put big speakers up. It's just a fun thing. Something like that's doable. The other thing we haven't talked about, the water ski industry is a fairly small industry. The boating companies are selling wakeboard boats and not ski boats so much. The water ski companies are selling wakeboards and surfboards, not so much slalom skis anymore. I've been with Craft and Ski Nautique for 20 years on a promotional program. They've even changed their marketing this year, where they want to start getting back to grassroots, which is the Lake Lemons of the world. So it is absolutely 100% for sure possible to get a boat down here, to get a certified instructor, a pro instructor, to do a fun day for the homeowners on the lake, anybody that has an interest. That's out there, and we've talked about that, and you're probably gonna get to a slide on this, but
Yeah.
it's unlimited, just, you can take what you want, and you wanna be involved as you want. They're here to help raise money and to give back, really. In order for any deal to be right, it's both sides have to win.
Well, we need a lot of money.
Yes.
We'll get into that.
Now the children are allowed to have.
Any further questions? I want to
Yeah,
let these. Are
we
you-
understand that our time here is, it's your meeting, so if you guys have any questions, there's a question slide. We'll be sure to email this slide deck out to all you guys.
Okay.
So you can follow up with any other questions that you may have. And I think there's a couple other, just slides that are more on the community, things like that. So if you'd like to, again, you can reach out to any of us, and all of our information is in the slide deck. So we thank you very much for the time.
I got one last question. I apologize. How far from the shore would you be? Because there are a lot of fishermen that fish off of South Shore Drive, right off, I mean, right where your course would be.
Yeah.
And I mean, even during tournaments, I'm talking about our neighborhood. Tim, you probably fish there. And so, and I'm surprised somebody didn't raise their hand. It's too bad Scopel Jerry isn't here. But, so there are going to be some concerns.
Yeah.
And so I guess we'll wait from Angela to report back to
I
us.
think the answer to that question, though, is wherever you want it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
this is a privilege.
that's borderline between mine and his district. And I can tell you, we talked about building parking out on that South Shore there, okay? And the people that live right off of Solomon Harbor that face west are totally against it because of the noise. And that's 11 people. And none of them are here tonight, but, certainly those are concerns to our freeholders. So I'm not against it. I water skied as a kid until I had to get a new hip. So I think it's a great deal, and we certainly support IU. So,
Well, and I've been a fisherman all my life, fished a few tournaments, and certainly understand that aspect. And the bottom line is, both sides, the people that fish, the people that ski can work together.
Oh, yeah.
There's no question about it.
yeah. The last thing, when you're laying those cables there, you're going to see some PVC pipe that are crisscrossed down in there. Just pick them up and lay them up on the shore. Okay, that's right.
How will that affect all the bass fishing tournaments and stuff that we have throughout the summer?
We wouldn't be able to host bass tournaments during their stuff. When IU has rowing, during their actual events, they pay us extra money to not host bass tournaments. So for their practices, it doesn't really affect it. We allow the tournaments to go out. If they wanted to pay us to have tournaments or special events, we would have them pay for us to not hold bass tournaments. Otherwise, we would still allow tournaments to go out. Okay.
To address the noise, because we foresaw that might be an issue and a concern that we'd be in a specific area for longer and be practicing more. We'd just be practicing the same amount as we are right now, so it's the same noise level. And I mean, we're also very happy to compromise if you don't want us skiing the course at certain times to lower noise.
What's a normal practice day? What
as
time
of
does it
right
start?
now-
What time?
Yeah, as of right now, a lot of times, especially when it's early in the season and or later in the season when there's more daylight, we usually get to the lake like 7 a.m. because we have a lot of people who have 8 a.m. classes. So if you guys are up, you'll see us out in the boat a lot. And from there, the wakeboarders come in and they're skiing throughout the day. But usually it's the morning slot, which we already do, but we're also willing to.
That's on a personal level, per skier, the time that they can spend behind the boat is not very long. At a physical level of skiing around the course, it's very physically demanding, especially when you're really pushing yourself to get to the next ball and keep skiing. So you maybe have, in tournaments they give you 4 to 6 passes per set. So maybe you can do 10 to 12, and as you saw with the video, it passes no more than 15 seconds.
Sure.
So
Sets are about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's about all you can do. And one other thing on the fishing tournaments, just to be clear, this is not the rowing team, of course, but this water ski team would never want to interfere with a bass tournament. Somebody needs to have a bass tournament, they can wait another day to practice.
They're just communication. They would need a communication
Yeah.
demand.
Yeah.
communicator to manage.
on weekends.
Not an issue for them. Yeah.
Now, I saw from that ranking up there, you were 1 notch under Purdue.
Yeah, that's good.
You
That's
were
good.
practicer, could you guarantee you'd
I promise.
be on?
Okay, good. All right.
Yeah.
They ski all the
Gotcha.
time.
Well, we thank you very much for your time and your diligence, and
Yeah,
Brian,
nice
thanks for
job,
coming.
guys.
Yeah, I may have to make you promise if we decide to go ahead with this. I have a son who's 31. We have a son who's 31, and he was on your ski club, and he begged me. I told Laura this earlier. Mom, we need a slalom course, and I just flat out said no. And didn't think about it. There was no presentation.
She's
so
a troublemaker.
So he may have to have a guided run because he's old now. So you guys
Not a
might have to
problem.
take him out and help him.
We have
Whatever it takes.
One more thing, we just would like, we don't have a date yet, but we'd like to invite everyone on the lake, alumni, and like any of our friends and family to a cookout in the spring at the IU facility, and just like to know you guys better. And
It's something where we can establish too, like a learn to ski sort of scenario that we'd like to do on an annual basis where we get the community involved.
Do you have a date for that? Did I
We
miss
don't
it?
have a date yet.
Keep touch and let us
Yeah,
know.
we
And
will
that
definitely
sounds
send-
great.
we'll
Very
definitely
good.
send it out to you guys
All
if
right.
you want it, so.
We thank you very much, and as I said, if you would care to exit, you're welcome to do that. I'm sure you don't
And
want us
what I
to
would
do the rest of it.
recommend is that they engage in conversations with Adam. to-
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely, yeah, and they already have been, and we've been good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. All right, treasurer's report, Mr. Blackwell,
Yes, ma'am.
you got a new thing for Christmas.
Yeah, for Christmas. Okay, this is probably the easiest month of the year. We had $110,341 in income, and that's mainly because of the Brown County and Monroe property taxes. And we had $20,762 in expenses. We wrote 20 checks, and one payroll check to Adam, and then, of course, a small payroll check to his helper there. So that's really, if there are no questions, I'll call for a motion to approve the reported claims for December 2017.
I'll make that motion, Mike.
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded. Any further discussion? Motion made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. I would like to let everyone know that I have been in conversation with Stephen R. Miller CPA firm to get a quote from him to look at his reporting and bookkeeping. As you can tell, we're still not getting descriptions on our checks. He has offered us a smoother transition and clearer reporting. I think that we're all looking for when we look at these statements. I've asked Adam to get a backup disk from our current bookkeeper. It's something we should have on file anyway. If her computer went down, then we would lose all of our data. So I've asked him to call her and get a backup CD. That way, if the board, I'm inviting Stephen Miller to the February meeting. I believe he might even be here. Thank you. Mr. Miller's in the audience if anybody has any questions. We've been in 3 or 4 correspondence between each other, and he's agreed to do that service for the same price that we're getting. So that's really, I just want that added to the February agenda. So
Fun.
thanks for coming, Mr. Miller.
I'd really like to see a sample report sometime. I know one of the complaints about the current one is the lack of descriptions in our check detail. But really, most of the descriptions, if I go out and I buy $100 in building and ground supplies from Lowe's, my allowance voucher says Lowe's Building and Ground Supplies. If I bought a pontoon boat, it said the guy's name, pontoon boat, which was the category. So I just want to make sure there's a higher level of reporting or something else that we're going to get. Because as far as the detail of allowances, vouchers, unless we go receipt by receipt by receipt, there's not going to be a whole lot much more there to put in. Then you guys do payroll, government reporting, taxes for governments. You guys are familiar with all that? I would have to see that. I mean, it's a
Would you
big,
wanna-
big transition. So we have to be really on board, and we have to get substantial benefit from
Would you
that.
want to use the PowerPoint then in February? Would you want Mr. Casey to have the PowerPoint available?
Well, before I go there, what I'd like to do is get access to the backup.
Okay.
And then I could take that information and say, recreate the report that you got originally to improve it and distribute that and
Okay.
See if you thought
That makes some sense.
That makes good
beneficial or
sense.
not.
Okay,
Okay.
that makes good
I
sense.
mean, if I just start from scratch, I'm not sure that you're going to see much, but I think if we take some of the data that you've already, has been entered and in essence reformat it, then I'm hoping that you'll get exactly what
Do you have a business card with you, Mr. Miller?
Yeah, but they're $50 a piece.
We'll take it. Would you give that to Mr. Casey so that when he gets the backup disc, then he can give you a call and?
I mean, I definitely support the idea of having better detail in the claims and stuff. I'm used to seeing a little bit more than what we see.
Yeah, but you're from
Come on. Even when I was in Brownsburg Parkport, I saw more, so.
It does. Do you have an idea of what you're asking for, Michael, for Mr. Miller? Do you have, I mean, other than?
I can show some, I can send Adam.
Okay,
example of
all
what
right.
what our
Thank you. That
claims
is my
should look like.
report. Thank you, Pam.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Miller.
Nice to meet you. Managers report, Mr. Casey, I guess we have to call you Mr. Casey now.
Yeah, when did we start with the
that?
Mr.
Casey.
Mr. thing?
Well, I mean, we've got a new gentleman in
Okay,
the audience.
we're trying to be on our best behavior.
All
Mr.
right,
Casey?
First off, on the manager's report, we have a mowing extension agreement. In 2015, we bid out the park mowing, dam mowing, and maintenance. Anderson Lawn Care came in actually about $6,000 below all the remaining bids. So we launched them for that year, then we gave the opportunity to renew for 3 years. This is the third year, so next year we will actually have to bid it out again through the proper bidding process. The cost is $10,560. Again, that was, I think the next one was about $16,000 when we bid it out. They've been doing a great job, and I'd just like to go ahead and seek approval for the mowing extension agreement for 2018 and 2019. We'll be going out and bidding out the whole process again.
And the dollar amount's the original amount.
Yeah, it's been the same price since 2015.
I would make that motion to
Second.
renew that. All right, it's been
Second.
moved and seconded. Thank you, Les, to renew the mowing extension agreement. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
I'll need to get your signature, Pam, after the meeting.
Okay.
2017 election update. There will be no election. It was all uncontested. We have Deborah Ladyman running for District 2, uncontested, and Pam Dugan is running in for District 6. So in February, there will not be an election. We will just have the new board members coming in and swearing on. So.
Do you have a phone number for her?
Sue thought she was done tonight. I thought I'd throw that out, but
I'm sure I have one at the office. I get too.
one more month, Sue.
I'll send you a phone number. Oh, thank you.
One more month.
General update, really it's hitting the ground now. We got stickers on order, subleases are rolling in. As far as the office is concerned, the season is officially here in full swing. So it's good, we're ready to go. I did have one thing on general update. We're scheduled our March meeting on Thursday, March 22nd. I was looking over our plans and we're actually hosting the Indiana Lakes Management Society 30th Annual Conference on that Thursday and Friday. So I wanted to ask the board if there's any big qualms against moving to the following Thursday, which is still in March 29th, which would actually be the 5th Thursday. We generally have quite a few contracts at that time, but so I'd really like to be here for that. But I'd also like to, I'm on a board member on the Indiana Lakes Management Society, so I'd ideally like to be there on the sponsor chair, so.
I have no problem with that. Adam, how does the
don't
rest of the
either.
board feel? I think we're all kind of out of
If
vacation
that's the
break.
case, I seek a motion to change the March meeting date from Thursday, the 22nd, to Thursday, the 29th.
So
Date.
moved.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? We're moving the March meeting from the 22nd to the 29th.
The time and location will remain the same.
Same.
And
All,
don't forget to change the website.
good point. And he
Yes,
already
yeah.
cleared it with CBU.
CBU, so
we're
we
good.
got this, we have
Yeah.
the space.
All those
I
in-
cleared with CBU today.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. It brings us to the Strategic Planning Committee. Mary Jane?
Okay, I'm going to do this backwards from what's listed here. We did not have a regular planning committee meeting due to the weather. We were all on the phone, so we have no recommendations to make to the full board tonight. We have a new member who has joined the committee, Bill Souter, and Bill is here this evening, sitting in the front row. So we're happy to have had him join us. And we talked about a number of things, and I'm going to turn this over to Adam in a minute, but one of the things that we did talk about was the Community Foundation. And since the last meeting when Lance and Ann and Adam had met with the Monroe County Foundation, Adam actually had a meeting with the Brown County Foundation, and we learned that the underlying structure for their plans and how to invest with them is basically very similar to the Monroe County. And after some discussion, we feel that there's kind of no reason that we wouldn't have a fund in both counties. So we have to nail down some things, but we will be coming back to the board with some recommendations around that probably in the next month or so. We have Les and Bill are going to work on starting the development of a plan for Riddle Point Park accessibility. Well, and they will be calling on Michael as a resource, since Michael's not a member of the committee. I just want to be clear. So they're going to start that process, and so stay tuned for more on that. And then the third thing, and this is really the big thing, and I'm going to let Adam do the bulk of this because he has a whole presentation for us, is we have a lot of exciting news around the sediment management project. And Malcolm and Frank and Adam have been talking to a number of the consulting firms and have narrowed down the number of firms that we would like to present to the board for consideration and then eventually recommendations. So Adam, I'm going to let you take over.
Really quickly, just on the Community Foundation, one of the main difference and intriguing parts is for the non-permanent fund, where Bloomington required a $5,000 donation, which we cannot use our taxpayer dollars for. Monroe County does not have a minimum donation, so we can do a non-permanent fund with Brown County does not require a minimum donation, so we can start a non-permanent fund with a $0 gift. They also have a non-permanent invested fund where they will invest those funds, and they will actually give us 3 years to get up to the $5,000 limit. They do require $5,000 for investing, but they'll give us 3 years to raise that money before they'll transition over. So that's the quickest thing. All right, now the bread and butter. We have been working. All right, on the Strategic Planning Committee, we have been working on what I've been calling the Lake Lemon Sediment Management Project. We already have the Sediment Restoration Project, SRP, which is our in-house dredging operation. We've been dredging since 2005, bought the own equipment in 2009, and really we've just been doing access dredging where we're maintaining access, providing access, but we're really not touching the sediment that's coming into the lake proper, that's filling in the eastern delta, as you can see here and as we all know by boating out there. So what we started doing, and this initially started off with a KCI work, is we had them come up with some conceptual designs about how we can further manage the delta. And in this presentation, I'll go over that. We have our project purpose, our management options, which we kind of went through initially with KCI at a 1,000-foot level. Then I'll get into some of the proposals that we received from the companies and the next steps coming up. So this is kind of what I came up with as the project purpose. These are my own words. But really we want to utilize the science-based management alternatives to reduce, remove, and consolidate sediment loading within Lake Lemon and its tributaries. And the goal is to enhance wetland functionality and increase sediment accretion, or the rate of sediment pileup and land formation in the peripheral wetland areas where it's already becoming wetland areas and now we can't use, and thus reducing the impacts and rates of sedimentation in the lake proper, increasing the efficiency and the longevity of our dredging. So rather than focus on dredging the lake proper as a whole in that eastern end, what we really want to do is utilize the wetlands that we have, the old stream pathways, utilize nature and kind of modify that so we're trapping that sediment further east before it even enters the lake. So we'll essentially be increasing wetlands, the wetland forest and building up that area instead of worrying about losing the entire bay as we are doing now. So the sediment management options, with KCI we came up with 4 options. The first option and the cheapest was no action. We just let it fill in, which is the natural course. We are a reservoir, man-made lake. Ultimately, all reservoirs with the downfall of sedimentation. They come in. Mother Nature didn't want it here in the first place, and it's doing all she can to take it back over. The next option was dredging, which would include the entire eastern bay, coming in, removing all that sediment. The problem with that is we don't have anywhere to put that much dirt. There's just really, we're surrounded by hills. There's minimal areas that we have for depositing sediment at, and not a whole lot of areas that we can put it in the lake. So we can't really just go in and just remove all that sediment because there's nowhere to put it all. Next was in-place management, where essentially we would create a berm, the wetlands, and just let the sediment fill in to this eastern area, try to trap it all in one area and just let it fill up there. And then fourth is the hybrid, where we kind of manipulate the delta to localize the sedimentation areas, and then we go in and manage those areas. So while we're creating wetlands, we're trying to create sedimentation, ponds, and pathways that we can go with our own equipment and maintain throughout the future. So this was kind of from KCI. This was their option number 4 in a big presentation that he gave. And their proposal was the green line. That would essentially be a berm with wetland behind it. But we don't want to give up that much of the lake. So in ours, we're going to include dredging, essentially hopefully back up to Ellis Point and north, and then turning where that's already wetland, enhancing that wetland and using that as a trapping area. So what we did is we started looking at companies throughout Indiana and nationally that kind of have a background in the sediment management and manipulation. A lot of companies that we used before do civil engineering projects, but not necessarily modifying and manipulating Mother Nature and what we're looking to do. So we reached out to 6 companies initially, Geosyntec, Shrewsbury, KCI, V3, Christopher Burke, and Williams Creek. And to a couple of them, it was just a dredging project. And I'm not really interested in that. I don't want just sediment removal. I want buildup of wetlands, and if we're going to have wetlands, I want kind of an artistic vision. Have anybody been to Bean Blossom Bottoms? They have, it's where Bean Blossom Creek comes out, it's all wetlands. They have pathways and boardwalks and nature areas. And if we're going to build up that area on the east end, I think we should use it for a recreational area as well. I think that'll help sell us for the bond, it'll help sell it to the CBU, and it just kind of increases the benefit to the public. So kind of as we were weeding them out, we essentially came down to 3 companies, Geosyntec, Shrewsbury, and KCI, and we've received qualification-based proposals, which I emailed the board to review and kind of go over. And what that's kind of telling is the teams that they're looking at, the relevant projects that they've done before, a quick kind of cost analysis, and we did get a more broke down cost estimate, which I had copies printed out and I forgot them. So I'll email those out to everybody once I get back to the office tomorrow. So first I'll go ahead and talk about Shrewsbury, who we actually have a couple people on the floor here. And I can give my little spiel unless you guys want to go first. All right.
That way we're equal with everybody else.
All right. So Shrewsbury, from what I can find, was founded in 2001. They do have local offices in Indianapolis, and they just opened up an office in Bloomington. And that's one of the key factors for me working with a consultant, is I like to have somebody local that can be on the grounds, I can talk to, they're easy to get a hold of, and once we get into construction management, they're around. So that was a big factor that I really liked. They really have a broad experience in sediment mitigation or mediation projects in Indiana and around the nation. They do have the local office with experienced staff, and they've actually worked with IDEM, DNR, and our local agencies quite a bit, which I think is a benefit. Some of the other companies have a lot of national projects and experience, but not a whole lot of experience dealing with Indiana as a whole. So the initial quote that came in was $123,000 for Shrewsbury, and it was very detailed for breakdown. And these quotes need to be taken with a grain of salt, because we'll have to remediate them and kind of modify them a little bit once we learn exactly what we need to get our bonding, how much of a conceptual design we need to be able to apply for the bonding and the funds. Because if we only need, an eagle eye view to get the bonding, well then we get the eagle eye view, and then we kind of roll everything else into that lump sum once we come up with the financing. because we do only have the $50,000 budgeted for right now. Some of the relevant projects that were in their experience-based proposal started off with was the Geist sediment dredging operation. So they're running the dredging operation in Geist Reservoir, which I think they're lucky because they have the IMI pits right next to them to get rid of soil. But they do have the dredging experience and know-how. Another one is the US 40 wetland mitigation. So it's highway construction, we actually have to go in and mitigate the wetlands. So they do have the wetland creation experience, wetland modification, and wetland enhancement, which is what we'll be doing a lot of on the eastern end of the lake. And we will be mitigating as we're impacting and modifying these wetlands, and we'll need to mitigate them, be it creation of new wetlands, enhancement of current wetlands, or new wetland locations. Another one is the Coal Creek Wilson Recreation Wetland, and I really like this because that's kind of that artistic vision where they created and enhanced a wetland, they put in boardwalks, they made it a nature area preserve, and it's utilized for the public very well. And I think that needs to be one of the selling points to both to our freeholders and towards the city to get them on board as, while we're benefiting the lake, and the freeholders are also providing new opportunities and recreation potential to the community as a whole and the Monroe County residents. Stony Creek drainage area, this was 5,000 linear feet of actually remanned and redirected an entire creek to, I guess part of it is sediment, but a lot of it is habitat enhancement. We're inputting riffles, pools, and runs, stabilization. And that's what we'll be looking at, along with this project in the lower reaches of Bean Blossom Creek is where are some of the problem areas, where can we enhance it at, stabilize, and what can we do to the creek to both enhance the productivity and sediment capture within the creek. Geosyntec, they're founded in 1983. Geosyntec seems to really have written the book on a lot of the stuff. They're responsible for the national BMP database, which is best management practice. They have huge dredging and manipulation projects all over the country and world, but they do not have any local experts. They do have an Indiana office, but their dredging expert, who would be the technical expertise for the project, is based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee, and a lot of the other people are out of the Carolinas, so there's not really a local presence of people that would be working here on the project. They did come out, the initial quote at $103,000, so it's kind of right in range with Shrewsbury, but they do not have a local office, which I think is kind of a big benefit. Some of their projects, feasibility study for sediment removal at Onondaga Lake in upstate New York, Syracuse.
Is the train coming?
The train does
We're done with the trust.
This is a sediment removal project. So they're looking at the feasibility of dredging, where to put the sediment, and how to decrease sedimentation. Another one is their creek remediation program. So they were stabilizing creeks, creating barriers, manipulating water flowways, which is kind of what we'll be doing where Bean Blossom Creek comes in. Stream bank and channel stabilization and detention basin retrofits. We will be looking at sediment detention basins as we create these flow pathways so we can go in and manage these basins ourselves. And then one last one is the International Stormwater BMP database. So they run the international database for best management practices essentially for groundwater flow, what to do with it, how to stabilize it, and how to protect waterways. So they come very well qualified, but again, they're not local. Next up is KCI. KCI did our initial feasibility study for us and came up with the 4 designs. They're established in the 1950s, and they do have an Indianapolis office. Their initial quote for the base work had $63,000, but they said they would absolutely need the sediment transport study and the wetland boundary survey, which brings it up to $99,600. So it's right in the area. But in the quote, and as you guys will read, there was quite a bit of concern as not having enough information, and they weren't really confident on the quote. So there's going to be a lot of hurdles that they're going to have to pass and work with governing agencies on this. So they weren't really comfortable, and they said that a solid quote price is not able to be given at this time. They'll have to modify that as we go on I think part of that comes back to, I don't think they have a whole lot of experience in this. They did have the Grand St. Mary's project, but whereas Geosyntec and Shrewsbury have a lot more experience on these projects that we were actually looking at. I think that was the reason for them saying that the price will have to be modified as we go. Their projects, KCI, we've learned about Grand St. Mary's, and they've mentioned this as a couple different projects where they did the restoration of services. That's essentially the wetland creation and enhancement to take up nutrients. And then the treatment train, which is also the restoration and enhancement of wetlands. And really the Grand St. Mary's is very different from us, is where they didn't have a sedimentation problem, but they had a nutrient problem because it's completely surrounded by farm fields. So it really became anoxic conditions, no oxygen in the water, heavy algal blooms, and it's really a result of the nutrients, not sedimentation. And the reason that got done so quick and they found the money is because it became a public hazard. So the governor stepped in and they came up with the money to dredge out sediment laden because the nutrients soared with the sediment and to create the wetlands. Next one I have is just a shoreline stabilization, which is with riprap, which is essentially what we do ourselves in-house. And then a watershed management program, which is kind of what like 319 and IDEM does, where there's state ones that'll come out and do the watershed. So as you guys have those, and I'll be sending out the pricing, but really what it comes down to is the next few steps. We kind of come down to the 3 companies that we believe would be best for the job at hand. But before we can really pull the trigger on this and put any funds down, first we got to meet with the CBU. I've tried to get hold of Vic Kelson. He's actually out of the office for a week, but I've requested that we have a meeting here as soon as possible to discuss our plans and moving forward, because we do have to have the blessing from CBU to incur significant debt. I don't see why they would be against this. It's a resource for them. It's a resource for the public. So you would think they would want to have the preservation and maintenance. So we will be working with them. Obtain the qualification details from our bonding companies. One of the reasons we're starting with a conceptual design is the bonding companies, in order to get the funding, will require a certain degree of conceptual plans to show that we know what we're doing, what we want to accomplish, that we already have kind of our ducks in a row, we have the companies in a row. So we need to go back and get with them, our finance subcommittee on the SPC, and talk about what we actually need, because that may affect the pricing in these conceptual designs too. Because if we only have to go to a certain level of detail, well then what we should do is go to that level of detail in order to get the bonds. And once we get that lump sum, we kind of roll in the rest of the creation and the contract documents into that money, that way we have it. And that can hopefully get us closer to the money that we have this year. We do have the $50,000, and other than that, we're pretty tight this year. I don't think we're going to find another $50,000 just laying in the budget. We did have, I did apply for a $50,000 grant from Lair for a design build project in Lake and River Enhancement. They said those will not be coming out until August, though, is when they will be awarding those. So we'd always start the process in advance, but I think the CBU and talking with the bonding companies are the next major steps. And then after that, we really should, I agree with getting the concept going, but we need to start having public meetings once we kind of pick the company that we want to work with and start getting the initial designs. Because along with bonds come repayment, and along with repayment, we're going to have to find ways. The money's just not going to show up without the foundation. Ultimately, it could affect taxes and property values in order to pay these back. So we are going to have to get the public on board, as our tax money will essentially be collateral.
Well, and we want, there are a lot of things, not just to tell people that we're going to ask for a tax increase, but to make them aware of what we're going to do with the charitable giving and other ways to raise money.
Yeah.
So, and to have them understand at a pretty significant level of detail what doing this is going to mean to the lake and the preservation of it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, it's going to be a combination of how to pay it back, and ultimately, I mean, if everything comes back to property values, and if you don't have a lake, well, then you don't have much property value.
So when you say public, you really mean freeholders?
Freeholders, yes, since that's half of our revenue base. We really need to get them on board with those.
Not unlike what we did last May, just to raise
Yeah.
awareness, this
Right.
would be kind of a logical next step.
Yeah, and I think having some of the base conceptual designs would really help out with that too, because we can say, all right, here is our vision, this is what we want to accomplish. So those are really the next steps that I have. That's the gist of the presentation. You guys have the documents to read over, and I'll get the financing documents from them. But at this point, I'd like to invite Sam and Blake from Shrewsbury, just to come up and talk a little bit about what you guys kind of have to offer and what you feel, your understanding of the the project. And
Sure.
Adam, I didn't get a copy of the Shrewsbury report. I think you said that the SPC had it, but
I emailed it.
He emailed them.
Board packet?
he
It's in-
said it wasn't in the board packet. You know what?
No, it was a separate
No,
email.
separate
It was
email.
a separate
Yeah.
email.
Separate email.
We
Oh,
only got them this week.
okay. It was not in the board packet.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
I'll go ahead and start. I'm one of the principals of the firm. My name is Blake Wilson. The Geist Reservoir sediment removal was my project. Actually, that was before Shrewsbury. I worked on that when I worked for Paul I. Kripe at the time. Shrewsbury is an asset sale of Paul I. Kripe. I headed up the environmental division at that time, and they sold us off to Bill Shrewsbury, who wanted to start a company, a legacy company that, he served many years in the government. He was lieutenant governor, deputy mayor, and a number of other things, and he got out of politics. He's an engineer, and he wanted to start a company. So I sold the environmental asset to him, and then from there we've grown to the company that we are. We're over 70 people. We've been around for 17 years. We're on our 16 years. We're on our 17th year now. To answer a lot of your questions, you guys are now heading in the right direction. Everybody that proposed gave a proposal based on the information you had, but actually what it comes down to is narrowing down to what you really want to do. And that will change the fee considerably. Because if you only need conceptual, that's really what you need to get by with the government agencies, get by with your public, and get by with your bonding agencies. That's what you're going to look at for this year. You're also looking at it, Adam, in the right way. The more you do on the wetland side, and the more you do with the soil conservation services, which will limit the amount of sediment coming in, you can create a nice filtration system, a natural filtration system that's going to do what you want, and provide the water quality aspect that you're dealing with this lake right now. So in the long run, you're heading in the right direction. There may be some other options I can help you with, funding-wise, by what you want to do. Not going to guarantee anything to any of you guys, but because you are creating a better wetland and a higher quality, you might be able to sell some of those credits off and get paid for it. Okay, that will depend on what the government agencies will allow you to do, because you're going from deep water to shallow water, and you're going more to a forested wetland and a more enhanced wetland than what you have, which is what sounds like what you want to do. Plus, if you do it correctly on the hybrid situation, you can also improve your bass fishing area. Since you do a lot of, it sounds like, I'm glad I came to listen to the ski people. But since you do a lot of bass fishing tournaments here, the more you enhance your lake, the better it's going to be to get more and more people, which is also going to bring income in. Now, in this, I'm your regulatory expert. I deal mostly with the regulators. I know the Corps of Engineers very well. Sometimes good, sometimes bad. Sometimes I have to bring bad projects. The Geist sediment project started out as a really bad project because the people didn't want it. Noise, you're going to have all kinds of problems there. Boater issues. That was a reservoir owned by the water company. You don't technically own your reservoir. You own the dam and you own the water rights, but the water going through belongs to the federal government. Whether you like it or not, they're going to tell you what you can and cannot do. What happened in that situation, and I'm sorry to make this a long story, but literally the water company threatened to open the floodgates and lower the water down, said, okay, we'll dredge it out once we drop the water down. That did not make anybody happy that lived on the reservoir. So you have options The scenario is the option that worked out best for them is IMI was right there and they could sell the material underneath. So they dredged out all the sand and gravel underneath and the sediment came with it. They had a huge pond that they could put the sediment in. They sold off the sand and gravel, and they actually paid for the dredging of the reservoir. So the water company got by very cheaply in the process. On this project, and we're not going to go into great detail on your systems because I think you guys are heading in the right direction. Sam would be the project manager. He's locally here. He is one of our engineers, one of our water quality engineers, and he'll be stationed here in Bloomington. That's where he lives now. We like Sam so much, we created an office here for him. He was moving because his wife took a job as a principal down here. We didn't want to lose him. So we made an investment in Bloomington to keep him on our staff. He's that good. You guys will be happy with it. Other than that, I'm here for whatever he needs and whatever you need. You're going to run ideas by me, I'll be more than happy to answer whatever options you have. And that's pretty much it. I can give you a history on this Shrewsbury if you'd like. But it started out as environmental and it's now an engineering firm. So if you have any questions, we'll be more happy to answer them.
So where are you, out of Indy or?
I'm out of Indy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I live on the south side of Indianapolis.
Okay.
And I'm not a Purdue grad. I'm a Ball State grad. So, my son's an IU grad.
So I think we had sort of kicked around the idea of possibly getting some money for the wetland creation and stuff. With your plan, refresh my memory, is there a substantial amount of that?
You'd be surprised. There is only one wetland bank in Indiana right now. They had one, there was one that was created up in Anderson about 6 years ago. It sold out within 2 years. Wetland banks are very unique in the state of Indiana. They're extremely highly regulated. You have to design them exactly the way the Corps wants them. IDEM tends to fight them a little bit, but since you already have a natural habitat scenario, the issue that comes up with a wetland bank is was there one already there? You know, can you restore it? And how much change are you making? In a lot of cases, in a delta situation like you have, they're going to say, well, you automatically got a natural delta. Okay, can we get partial credits back? We want to make it forested. We're going to change the way it looks now and actually fix it to meet your needs. A lot of times they'll give you credits for that and say, okay, we'll allow you to establish wetland credit. Now, there's a management system to that. You literally are managing your wetlands. You're creating an area that says this is all going to be wetlands. This is what's already here, and this is what's more we're going to create. This is how much we're going to enhance. It becomes a legal document. That property now becomes a legal entity, and you literally are selling off credits to, and in most cases, the Department of Transportation is usually the biggest buyers of these, but a lot of developers will buy them too. But you're selling these credits off to the developers that says, okay, we're going to sell it, that way they don't have to create a wetland on their property. A wetland credit can go anywhere from $30,000 to $75,000 an acre. So you literally, it's whatever you want to sell, it's how much you're going to create. I've sold them as high as $110 an acre up in near the Gary area. So it just depends on the need. It has to stay in the same watershed you're in, the 12-digit watershed you're in. Luckily, you're in the White River watershed, but you're in the lower White River watershed. So you've got, your biggest buyer is going to be NDOT, because they've already created some problems, so.
How many acres are we looking at? I mean, I know we're not, part of the plan is that, but any idea how many acres?
Yeah.
As far as creation?
Of wetland, yeah. Any guess or?
I'd say, I mean, a lot of it's going to come in where we do sediment storage. So one of the things that we were looking at was if we were doing hydraulic dredging in that main bay, potentially that southern overflow pond along the causeway, I think that is about 15 acres. And ideally, I mean, that could be a huge wetland cell right there where we already have the piping. We could pipe into there our sediment for the dredging portion of the bay. You turn that into a wetland, plant it. Well, right there you have 15 acres. And if you're getting credit, and then out in the main bay, if we enhance that area, say we go straight from Ellis Point, that's probably another 40 acres right there. From essentially our buoy line until we get into the dense lotus and then into the wetland forest right there. So I bet we're playing with every bit of 75 to 100 acres of wetland creation and enhancement once we get into the heart.
We've got another 15 or 20 acres of wetlands that's east of Polling's Farm, north of south of South Shore Drive. It stays wet there all the time. And then you've got a 20-acre field that I thought that we could do the serpentine pond in there if we wanted to create, and it's got a culvert. We can go underneath the culvert and do all that there.
And it's on us, on our property, or?
Well, no, that would be farm property. We would have to rent that. We would have to rent that acreage, which would be an additional cost.
Yeah. Now, please understand, federal government still has full say whether what you can and cannot do. The Army Corps of Engineers, once you get your conceptual, you sit down with the Army Corps of Engineers and you run it by them. This is a big project. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Not that many dredging operations go on in the state of Indiana. We just don't really have that many. But in a situation, they do allow them. There are certain things that they allow without even questioning what's going on. If you're gonna dredge it out and haul it out there, they don't care. They're Army Corps of Engineers. That's what they do. They haul the material out in major waterways. The issues that they do have in is what you're planning to do with that dredge material. If you're going to keep it back in the waterway, you better have a good reason for it. Because the whole aspect is you want to take it out. But if you're going to create something that's even more environmentally friendly, that's more what they're going to learn, they're going to want to discuss with you. The other thing you have to understand is if it's already a wetland, unless you can enhance it more, they're not going to let you disturb an existing wetland. What you have to do is prove that it's going to be better than what they have it at the time. Okay?
Would you work concurrently with the Corps and
Oh,
IDEM?
and on this project, you want to get the Corps in here as soon as possible.
What's the guy's name, Greg Bieberdorf or something like that? Is that who you talked to?
He's with Larry, he's with DNR.
Okay.
DNR, yeah. And literally what you're going to do, you're going to have a lot of government agencies look at this. Okay? The Corps will take jurisdiction. They're the top tier. IDEM is number 2 on that, and it just depends on who they give you in that scenario. More than likely, the person, it will either be I can't even get his last name out. But he's going to be Laban from the Corps here, or they're going to send somebody up from Louisville because it's that big of a project. Okay, and that's all they're going to look at pretty much in the process to help you get this through. IDEM is going to do the same thing. They're going to find out who their representative is and say, this is going to be representative for the next 3 or 4 years, because that way that person is going to be familiar with it from then on. DNR is going to do the same thing. DNR is going to have historical, the Fish and Wildlife Division and the Water Division all take a look at it. Then you're going to have U.S. Fish and Wildlife, which is here in Bloomington, that's going to take a look at it. Those are just a few of the agencies that are going to look at it. And you're going to also have other people that are just out and about that go say, we want to know about what's going on. And I'm sorry, I'm taking up all your time, and I apologize.
Oh, that's what we need to know.
This is what we need to
So
work.
the first thing is to get with the Corps and say, hey, this is our concept plan. This is what we want to do, what you want to do, and this is what we're proposing. Then they will help work with you to massage that to where you want it to be.
To get past IDEM.
Well, they'll take jurisdiction, and then IDEM will say, well, we want this and this, and then the Corps will say yes or no, that they're going to allow that or not. But IDEM would be the next one we would go to and go, okay, this is what we're going to do, but we're going to create this for you. The dredging aspect is that we're just going to give it deep water. We're going to give you back a wetland. That's what they want. Now, they're a little bit more of a fighter on whether they're going to let you sell the credits off. They're going because they tend to be, well, it was already a wetland, you're going to try to sell it. No, we're going to sell an enhanced wetland away. It was already a wetland, but we're going to make it a lot better. But we want you to allow us to turn it into the park that we want it to be and in how we want to set it up. That way you can put in what you want and not have them dictate to you what you want, what they want.
So now, does your company do all this coordination? I mean, that sounds like a major headache. This is what you guys do.
But this is what we do. This is actually what I do. This is one of the roles that I play in the company, is I get to be the person that gets to go with the good news and the bad news with the Army Corps, with IDEM, DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife. That's what I've done for the last 30 years.
Okay.
The scenario that comes in, and literally, and I always tell my clients this in the situation is, you go in with a big expectation, but we will plan on what you're willing to accept. Because they're going to come in, they're gonna say, we want you here, you have this idea, they want you here, but we need to know where the middle is. I'm your negotiator to get you to where you need to be. That's what my role is.
I think that's gonna be one of the biggest issues, is navigating the
Yeah.
regulatory side, and that's how we're gonna have to have a partner to work through this.
Will you have a ballpark then, when your final analysis is finished, what the cost is gonna be to us?
Yeah, certainly, we'll have estimates as we go through. And I think the proposal we put together, we based that off of the information Adam sent, and we were projecting probably about a 30% set of construction plans that would be ready. And then we would have a detailed estimate for that phase, but we could do that detailed estimate with a lesser set for each of the concepts we come up with. And we can kind of modify that scope of work. If we don't need a 30% plan, we only need a 20% plan. We could reduce some of the funding there, but we could also still do some cost estimates, maybe get more detailed on some of the concepts. Because I think part of the vision that we had was to do some concepts and then move into like a detailed design and get really detailed with it, at least up to 30% level. We could spend a little more effort and look at the concepts and work with the agencies and get a good idea of what the direction moving forward. Because I think the KCI report was a great report, but I don't think it had a lot of time, it was kind of back of the napkin. It was a rough estimate, or rough kind of layout of the managed delta, and it sounds like guys wanted to kind of change it already, so kind of nailing down the concepts and the cost or what's
I think we just wanted them to scratch the surface.
Right.
And they did a great job at it. They gave you the information you needed to make an educated decision where you want to go. What Sam is alluding to is we're going to give you a pretty much conceptual that you're going to sit down and start discussion. We'll give you 3 conceptuals. You've already had 4 or 5. You already know what it is. I mean, you've got it, but now you've kind of narrowed down to you want a hybrid. The hybrid is what is it that's going to fit what your needs are. Mm-hmm. That's the perfect synopsis for where you start with. So you get three synopsises on how to do the hybrid. Then those are, once you select one you like, that's what we go to the regulatory and go, this is what we want to do. But you always have the other 2 in the background when they go, hey, we want this. Because I'm literally going to make my team give you worst case, best case. But here's what you really want. So we'll work with Adam to get you, here's where you want, and then we'll put it on both ends. We'll present the best case that we can get.
It's always the government's way. You do the high, they do the low, and you find something in the middle.
And what's comical about it is, I work for a lot of government agencies to do the same thing. And government agencies really don't like other government agencies. So it's kind of comical to be the middleman between 2 government agencies are battling it out over a piece of property.
I lived on the Mississippi River area for 29 years, and the Corps of Engineers is just a royal pain in the ass.
Actually, in Indiana, they're the ones you really want on your side,
but
believe it or not.
We've constantly fought those people down.
Now, is that 20 to 30% completion level generally what they're looking for initially to go in and kind of get the okay to move forward on the project?
The conceptual for the core, we'll actually, on about a 10% set, we're gonna give you your concept of what we're proposing to go on. You don't really want to go any further than 10% because literally that can change. I mean, you can put a lot of time into just 20%, and that's not going to get you. You just want kind of a layout going, here's what our concept is. This is what it's going to look like. Well, and this is our idea, and it's like roughly, that's a small run because you're doing a narrative. I'm probably writing a 3 or 4 page narrative going, here's what they got, here's the rules and regulations we're following, and here's what we want to do. Based on that, then they'll come in, they'll sit down at the table. Actually, we bring them in here and we sit down and go, okay, let's hash out, what is our options? What are you going to give us, what are you going to allow us to do with that? Then you take that to get to the 20%, which is what you're going to need for your bonding agency. That's going to get you your money. So you're kind of using the core to give you the idea of what is doable, and then we can put that a little bit better so you can get your money, and you take the idea and fight and argue with them.
Yeah. So that initial 10% concept, say 2 or 3 concepts to go run with, and that'd be substantially reduced pricing.
Oh yeah.
What we have here for that 123, right?
Oh yeah.
Right. I think we have a line item there. It's like prepare drawing. It's at the very end of it. There's a couple things, but I think it says drawings, and that line item was about 44,000. So you figure reducing that by if that's 30%, if we do 20, you know, we
Yeah.
can take that time down
Yeah.
pretty much in a linear fashion.
And actually, with your time frame, it'll speed up your time frame. This is a great time to talk to the Corps. They're not dealing with any permits right yet, because it's still cold. They're also they're looking at all their JDs and everything else that's coming out. So this is a good time to put a request in to say, we would like to have a meeting with you, here's what it is. So if we can get everything together, if whoever you select gets everything together within the next 20 to 30 days, you can actually probably get a meeting with the Corps before the April in the process, and they'll be willing to sit down and talk with you guys and say, okay, we understand what you want to do. You get a little later in May, and it may take a little longer. Sorry.
Good to know.
We
Good
can
to know.
refine the scope as we need. You know, we can maybe, I think that the way we envisioned it was kind of pushing forward with a detailed design, but if we really want to kind of focus on those preliminary options and kind of refine those better, you know, I think there'll be some opportunities to reduce the cost, but still kind of get, you know, a good idea of what we're planning to do in the future and meet with the agencies and get that approved. You can approve, I think you can apply for an application with minimal plans, but then when you actually get to apply with 10% plans, and then when you get to 90% plans or 100% plans, those can't have any more impacts than you told them you were going to give them initially. So,
Is there a clock that starts as soon as you apply, or is it upon approval that the clock starts?
The clock actually starts for the permits, starts when you put your application in. The first thing you ask for is a meeting. You want to do a conceptual meeting. They'll put a number to your project, and they'll sit down and talk with you, and that whole number is so they can just track it. But their clock never actually starts until you put the application in. Now, the thing is, with a project like this, you know, sitting down with the Corps and going back and forth several times, it could be 6-8 months to a year before they'll even approve what you want to do. Being that if you want to take it into a wetland mitigation plan, it'll take even longer, because they usually take about 12 months, because they want a lot of detail, exactly what are the trees you're going to put in, how much sediment are you going to build up in a certain area, is the soil compacted enough to handle it, and all that. There's a lot of other little details that go in there, but those are the decisions you have to make, whether you want to go that far or not into those details. There's certain wetlands you can do that you don't have to put forest in. Forest is going to get you the greatest bang for the buck, but you can also go with some deep water. We're going to, the water's 16, 18 feet deep in one area. We're going to build this barrier up here, and we're going to bring it up to within 3 feet, and then we want to put a different type of vegetation on that one. The bass fishermen are going to be ecstatic, because you're going to put lily pads and everything else in there to help filter it, but that also gives you that emergent wetland that they're looking for. Now, you don't get as much money back on an emergent wetland because they don't have that many people are replacing emergent wetland. Forest is going to get you the most money, but that's where your part of your park is going to be.
So really, the next steps would be to kind of get a couple 10% as low level as possible to go to the Corps, meet with them, and try to lock in which direction we want to go. Once we have that direction, we move it up to the 20 to 30% necessary to go to the bonding agency.
Right.
And then we go from there.
And then you're literally, when we get to the 20% aspects and you're at the bonding agency, then you're literally looking at going, okay, how much more, where do we want to go this year? What do we want to go next year? What do you want to do? We're not telling you to stop what you're doing now, because you're still doing some maintenance dredging now to keep your stuff going. The thing is you want to manage it to how you want to do. Do you want a finger system coming out? Do you want to set it up? And there's some real advantages with Shrewsbury, that I'm going to tell you that may help. Oh, it always sways it from my side. One of the other principals of the firm, her husband's a professional bass fisherman. It's very easy to bring a professional bass fisherman and go, what type of aquatic vegetation do you want? What do you want in this area? We also have landscape designers. So they're landscape architects. So it's like, okay, we want you to come in, we want you to design it this way. Here's your parameters you have to work with. Here's the trees you can work with, there's aquatic life, and here's what you want. We would literally sit down with them and go, okay, you're gonna have, a lily bed over here, you're gonna have a different aquatic bed over here. These are the trees you want, these are the scrub we want, and we want to put some kind of walkway or boardwalk or whatever in there. You guys You know, if you guys want bridges in certain areas, that's an expense. Those are things you guys are gonna have to consider down the road. This is not something you do up front, but as part of your conceptual, when we get ready to put the permit together, you've gotta have all that kind of together, because you're gonna say, this is what we're gonna build. And then, you know, in most permits, only last 5 years. What you do is at the end of the 5 years, you extend it. You get another 5-year extension on that. That's what you have to build. So you got 10 years to build it on. After that, you'd have to apply for another permit. So we would say, okay, we're gonna build this amount in this time, this amount in this time. Those are what you're gonna plan through in this next year.
Now, there's the timing of it will work, you know, we can work with the Conservancy District to kind
Yeah.
of figure out what the time frame is for the project, whether it's over 5 years or if they want, you know, less seasons or more, or whatever. What, you know, you're going to have some sort of plan moving forward, and even if there's a, you know, man-made delta, you're going to have to still have some mitigation ongoing when it does come to the sediment, so.
Does Bloomington have a bond bank like Indianapolis or, I mean, they're
I'm not positive on that.
That would be a
Malcolm?
conversation, have a CBU.
Indiana has
about
a
that?
bond bank. We have a group we can go to. It's run by the state.
But I know the city of Indianapolis and the city of Carmel have their own bond.
Oh, is that right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, they used to
I
use
don't know
City
about Carmel. I know
Securities and it's
Indianapolis
changed its
does.
name.
Carmel's is new, it's
Pardon?
within the last year.
City Securities has changed their name to something, they got bought out by somebody. But that's who the Indianapolis used for years. I can't remember the name of the company.
What company did you look at, Malcolm?
It's Indiana Bond Bank.
Indiana Bond Bank, yeah.
I'll have to look into it.
I mean, that would be part of the conversation to have with Vic,
Yeah.
is to see also what the city does. Because if they have their own, there may be some savings as far as, but Indiana Bond, that would also be very much along.
So Adam, what do we need to do as a board? I mean, if there's this 30-day window for a meeting, I mean, is that feasible for us to make a decision and?
I mean, really, the
month?
next decision, we'll have to go back to the costs and see what it's gonna be to get these 10% concept plans and move forward. If we can get these into the sub $100,000 range, if we have around $50,000, we have the money, and at the $50,000 range, we can just say, hey, we're gonna work with these companies. If we're in the $50,000 to $100,000 range, we already have multiple bids in, so we could really select that company, but we need to refine it, because we don't have an extra $50,000 to $60,000, I mean, just sitting there right now to do. So really we'd have to get the pricing on what it takes for, say, these 10% multiple concept levels.
And we'll be more than happy to go back and revise our scope and everything, you know, and to make it fair, you want to talk to the other firms too. But what you can do, and to help you guys out a little bit, Adam, I'm more than happy to send him the document. Adam can apply for a meeting with the Corps. You know, I'm requesting a meeting with the Corps because I want to talk about this project. That way you're at least getting ahead of the game, and then whoever you bring in can go along with you once you sit down and talk with them. Because literally you're sitting up, they'll contact Adam and they'll say, can I have it in such a day? You know, maybe it's a month from now or whatever. And you usually try to give the Corps 2 or 3 weeks in there to have a meeting. You know, every time I ask for one, it's usually 3 weeks because it's their schedule. But the only reason I joke a little bit, the only reason that about the Corps getting in March and May is just because when the rainy season starts, that's when everybody's putting their applications in and they start evaluating. So I can send him the documents, he can submit it, and then at least you get on the docket so you can at least talk to him.
Seems like a no-brainer.
But really, to keep momentum out, I think if we get the new pricing structures, you know, we keep turning you guys around on pricing.
Fine.
It's part of the game,
It is part of the game.
But really, once we get the pricing down for the 10% concept levels, because we're looking at a 35% on this 123,000 multiple concepts.
That's what I
push
didn't know,
forward. If we get that
35%?
pricing, ideally then in February, we could say, all right, this is who we want to work with. And then at that point, we move forward with these 10% level designs and the meetings with the Corps.
Now, just so I'm clear, what are we meaning when you say a 10% concept?
10%.
Let me answer that in a different manner.
Okay.
So the regulatory groups are going to steer us down a certain path. We can't change that path. What we can change is options on how we address the individual facets. So do we use the overflow pond? Do we add width to South Shore and build a line and fill in sediment between South Shore and that line? do we use north of Possum Trot as a zigzag field to draw sediment to there? We have options in that. The concept would be, we would start with a firm. They would come up with what are the minimum we have to do's with all the regulatory group, and then address what are all the options that we have in order to achieve the end goal, okay? The options are then what would be presented as 3 different options, but it's still one path. That we would end up with an educational meeting to both the board and the freeholders in a May-June window. Then you could, as the board, could then choose which options are acceptable, and then we could produce further detailed design documents with the regulatory groups, taking it through the next steps.
But that first step was 10%.
The first step is a 10%. We know what a path is, but it has some options.
Like
We can then
10% of what? 10%?
Yeah, I think that-
100% is the construction documents that you go out for bid.
Exactly.
10% is 10% of the detail that you would have for
Okay,
construction.
Correct.
got it.
In most cases, it's a pretty diagram that is what you really want to do. You want to fill in these ponds, you want to create the wetlands over here, you have your delta here. This is what we want to do, and this is for it. It's a pretty picture. That's your 10%. This is what we're going to sit down with the Corps and go, this is what we'd like to do. The Corps will say, well, we'll let you do that, we won't let you do that. If you do this, it's going to take this. You know, you're going to need these studies to do this. And you go, okay, now we know what you are. That's what we're going to sit down and go, okay, take this to your plan. That's going from the 10% to the 20 to 25 to go to the bond bank. Going, we now know what we want. You guys have, understand what it is. You can go to the bond bank and go, this is how much money we need, because we can give you some ideas of what the cost is going to be. But in that same time, we can start looking for other funding methods that you can work with.
And then what also happens as you go higher on the percentages, I mean, at the different levels, depending on the degree of the scope, they give us the estimates as far as what it's costing. At 10%, you have a very high contingency number because you only have 10% of the detail. There's a lot of unknowns. And as you get closer and closer to that 100%, the level of contingency goes down. That doesn't go away, but it goes down. And the degree of confidence in the estimate gets higher and higher.
You'll never hear me say anything bad about these other 2 firms, because the other 2 firms are great firms. I know both of them very well. I've worked with KCI. I've never worked with the other firm, but I do know them quite heavily. So all of them are going to give you the same information. The scenario is, what you're looking at is what you really need. You need a consultant to sit here and go, okay, you really don't need to do all these tests. If the Corps is not going to let you go down this path, don't do all this testing. It's ridiculous to do all this testing. But if the Corps is going to allow you to go down this, now I have to be the advisor and go, it's going to cost you X if you want to go down this path. That's probably not the best suited for what you want. You only have a certain amount of funds. The worst thing that a consultant wants to do is tell you can't afford something. That's being unfair. We don't trace it that way. We accept the project as is ours. We own it. So the scenario is, you don't have the money, so don't go down this route. I'm going to waste your money to get to that point. Let's go a different route. Those are the options that a good consultant is going to tell you what you need to know. And I'm sorry, because there's going to be times when you'll hear me say, no, that's not going to help you. The other thing is, like, if you really want to create this fishing thing, it's going to create this other issue for you. If you want to create the deep water, it's going to create this other issue for you. Is that really what you guys want? You know, if you change the layout of what KCI has put out, here's where it's going to fall in. You know, the slalom skiers may not get to slalom ski for, you know, a couple years down the road. Or you can build a better area for the slalom skiers and benefit the bass fishermen in the same aspect, because you're smoothing it out a little bit in certain areas. So there's a lot of things you can do to support it all on the long run. But that's what you're paying a consultant firm for, is to have that honesty with you guys.
Thank you.
With all that said, and because I've been running numbers here since Adam said we didn't have the money. So if we do 10% of the concept and your total 35% bid was $123,000, you guys could get started with $36,900. That's 30% of what I just said.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And to complete the cost, the 35% concept, we need another $70,000. You know, and I don't mind telling everybody this, we had $197,000 in cash prior to getting the taxes from Brown and Monroe County. That was taxes that's what these guys have been doing for us for these last couple of years, is making money for us. I mean, we've got the money. We've also, even if we get in trouble, we've got $116,000 in CDs. I mean, that's just a general fund CD. We got $91,000 in if the dam breaks CD. So, if just so the board knows, from the treasurer, we have additional monies that we can do. I don't want you guys to know it.
Oh. I didn't hear
But
it.
we have additional monies. Well, he just said he'd do it for 36.9. That's what I
Yeah, we
want.
may not even need to tap in though. I mean, once we start with the 10%, we're going through regulatory.
So I used to work for a guy, and he got all upset, and now I understand why the
That was a
following
good question you asked,
very
too, by the
poor
way. I
grammatical
understand. That's
sentence
why I
came out of his
wrote those notes. That's a good
mouth. He
question.
said, "We've never not done anything because we didn't have the money. We will find the money."
Yeah.
I think, you know, we
I have
we
no
can
more
figure this
questions.
out.
I think you guys did a good job of
Yeah.
explaining.
Thank you.
And I didn't mean to take this much time.
No,
I-
that's all right.
No,
We
it was
needed
really
it. So-
informative. It was
no, we
needed.
it. So Adam, what does the board need to do next?
I think really once we get revised quotes for these 10% plans, at the next meeting, we need to select somebody that we want to work with.
So what I would recommend is that we also start working with our attorney to establish a contract.
Yeah.
And then I think it's critically important that we have the conversation with CBU.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, and I'm also wondering, the next board meeting is the annual meeting, and that's February 22nd. Should we wait that long to have another board meeting, or do we need to schedule a special board meeting so that we can make a decision sooner?
It really depends. I mean, we'll have to give Angela time to come up with a new professional services contract for this. But really, I mean, how long does it take to get revised quotes back?
We can probably next week, by next Wednesday.
That's why I think it's good for us to start the contract work here, because
CBU and
ultimately we're
Angela.
going to be doing
Yeah,
something. So
right.
let's start working on that so that we can have the negotiations with
And I was
whichever
going to
firm.
say too, Adam, we maybe want to meet again and go over the
Okay.
scope and see what, what we were thinking, what you were thinking, and kind of hash that out.
Okay,
and see
so
where we can
I'm
go
farther
from
down the
there.
road. We're gonna need to get with the Corps fairly quickly, according to what you said.
Well, again, I can send the information to Adam tomorrow, and he can fill out the paperwork. It's just a one-page document that says we're requesting a meeting.
Okay,
to
so
discuss
we
our
could get our
project.
meeting scheduled ahead
Yeah,
of.
and then literally,
Okay.
the actual, whoever you select can give you that 10% layout. You take that with you when you go to meet with the Corps. But
Okay.
literally, you're approaching the Corps now, so we'd like to have a meeting. When they contact Adam, they may say, hey, we have an opening next week. Adam would go, oh, wait a minute, can we wait 2 weeks? We were thinking this time right here to get it done. Then you're establishing your meeting ahead of
Okay.
time.
I'm
So
fine.
we need to meet with Vic and get a professional services agreement drafted.
And then I think as we get a little bit down the road, we can determine, all we need is 48 hours advance notice to establish a
Right.
meeting. So, I think we can get a little bit further down the track to know whether the 22nd is the appropriate time. Is it sooner? Is it a week later? Whatever it may be.
Okay, okay.
Fair enough.
We have templates for professional service agreements. If you guys would like us to send you something, we obviously go through that a lot. So.
All right. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did anybody else have any questions? Okay, what was his name again?
Sam Robertson.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't let his name fall.
Yeah, I'm sure you're going to see more maybe presentations, things like that in the future. So.
All right, folks.
Vic's next thing, so we have to see these blessings.
Any other public comment that anyone would care to make at this point? Everybody's asleep? All right, so as you heard, the next meeting is our annual meeting right here, at 6 o'clock, February 22nd, it's a Thursday again, as usual. And if there's no other business, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Did you have community foundation or anything like that to discuss? Did you already go over that?
We did.
Yes, we did.
Okay, the only thing I have is the DSG. Is it everyone's conception that we're going to stay in Chitwood and finish Chitwood in 2018? I think that's what Adam's comment was.
That's what I'll recommend, once we decide this, I mean, they have the equipment, we're in there.
Three of the board members are on the DSG. Michael's got a guy in his district that wants to sit on the DSG. Malcolm's the other, he sits on the DSG. So I didn't know if we need to have a DSG meeting, or if it pleases the board that we just bring that up in March, that we're gonna stay in Chitwood and finish Chitwood in 2018 and forego a DSG meeting.
We were thinking of bringing it up in February, as we've done the past couple years.
March, we brought it up in March, well.
Well, Adam and I were
Last
talking
year
about
we
this
brought it
today.
up in
You
February.
couldn't make the meeting, so I think we moved it back a month.
Okay.
Would you care to do that again and just deal with it next month?
Deal with it without a meeting? I can't deal with it without a meeting. I got, is that what you're
No,
saying?
at the next board, at the annual board meeting, as opposed to waiting till March.
I can give a staff recommendation and be in touch with the head of the DSG too.
Perfect, so there is no need for a DSG
Okay,
meeting.
well, we got called out on the open door law last 2 years ago, so we don't want to get called.
It's a tricky law.
It is a tricky law. I will take your lead on that, Adam. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give a staff recommendation in February. My intention is we've got the equipment, we started it. By golly, we're gonna finish.
That's good, okay.
All right,
Thank you.
may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second? Moved and seconded, all in favor say aye. Aye. Thanks for coming. Drive safely.
No. Well, that's why. I think we need it.
Yes, sir, it is.
All I've got is not that. Okay, good. That's what I don't have. Yeah, it doesn't help you to have a. No, you never had it. Thank you.
Where did you live on? Where did you live on?
We lived on, we lived
We do our stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah, we do our stuff. Yeah, we do our stuff.
I'll see you Saturday.
Okay, yeah. Well, and we, yeah, it's the same as Rip Brown.
You weren't actually on.
Just need to kind of get in front of that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good meeting.
the Arkansas side.
They did it.
Because that's the low part.
Right.
There are bluffs there, so.
Yeah.
It was a fascinating place to live.
Okay, well, I lived in the Quad Cities, so.
Oh, yeah, you're, okay, yeah. It's a wild ride. It's a wild ride.
I think they're like,
It's very fast.
You added them to the agenda, didn't you? Because you can.
It's a little bit.
Oh, okay, all right. Okay, that's all right.
They reminded me, and I went, hi.
Hi.
How are you doing?
I just want to say, am I the only one that senses a lot of positive excitement?
Oh, no, you are. I thought of your word, how you always say, I'm jazzed.
I am jazzed about this.
I've been feeling that way for a while, and I think it's just turned into the new year, and all the work, the great work you guys have done. You're in a good spot here. Yes, I know. We're on the right track. I'm thinking about some years back, some all the fighting and all of this and that.
Open door law.
We're going somewhere.
Yep, we can turn the east end into something that's really
Something
cool.
really neat. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it. And you have been such a huge part of it.
And then we're going to rebuild the parks, that we've got a nice meeting place, and we've got
I think
bathrooms and
Yeah.
walkways, and, yes.
I think Les and Michael are meeting about that now, unless it got too late for them. It was a little longer than I meant to. Did you have a good holiday?
Oh, yeah, you too?
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, but,
Were you in Florida? Or?
oh no, we were here. But yeah, the kitchen just got mostly done the Friday before Christmas. So we're still unpacking, but it's all good stuff. And,
That's a phrase we have at our office, basically done. It's basically done, which really means it's not done.
I'm done. I'm working on the punch list now. There's 20
Oh, okay,
items.
okay.
You know, there always is. But we're down to maybe 5 things. So once you pay them the money, when you pay them the money,
I have lots of them, of course.
from
I
Subway.
stock them.
Those are Taco Bell napkins.
Well, no,
Thank you very much.
they're all clean, by the way.
I'm a here. Oh, see?
Yeah.
I'm trying to assist a lady and, well, Malcolm, tell Kathy hello, and hopefully we can get together up our way one of these days soon. Before the weather turns warm, we're down south.
You know what needs to happen? You need to get the Friends of Lake Lemon going, and you need to put Kathy